Good evening, everybody. My name's Sophie Lieberman and I'm Head of Programs here at ACMI. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first in our inaugural ACMI Conversations, which will be a series of weekly forums where we bring together our communities of makers, players and watchers to explore the intersection between screen cultures across art, film, games, TV and digital cultures, and discover the myriad ways that screen cultures reveal our political, social and cultural moments, past and present, and also point to our futures. I think we're going to be massively upstaged this evening, but happily. As we begin this evening, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the land of the Kulin Nations, and our endeavour tonight with ACMI Conversations is only a small part of a long history of people coming together on this land to converse and explore ideas, to shape politics and to express their culture. And you would have been able to witness that this evening with Tandera down at Federation Square. We live and work on land that belongs to the oldest living culture in the world and which was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and elders from other communities who may be here today. So I'll hand you to our very able host and our panel in just a minute. But before I do, I'd like to acknowledge The Guardian as our partner in this evening's event and thank them for our support. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to visit Codebreakers, Women in Games, which runs through to the end of this week in Gallery 2 downstairs and was the inspiration for this evening's conversation. The curator, Serena Bentley, is unable to join us this evening because she's in London, but we're fortunate to have one of our curatorial advisors here this evening, Leena van Deventer, so thank you for being here, Leena. And Leena and Clementine will both be signing copies of their books at the end of this session, so please don't forget to pick up a copy. A quick plug, this is the first in 8 conversations for this season. Next week we will be looking at the intersection between art, science and virtual reality, and the week following looking at retro nostalgia, particularly as it's being expressed on our television screens at the moment, just in time for the launch of Stranger Things Season 2. So I think that's it from me, except to introduce you to Steph Convery, who is our able host. Before joining the Guardian, Steph was the deputy editor at Overland magazine, a freelance writer and arts worker here in Melbourne, and is no doubt known to many of you. She writes about politics, culture and the arts, and she has a PhD in creative writing from Monash Uni. She's also currently working on a book on boxing in Australia, and I'm already trying to work out how to weave that into a program in the future. Welcome, Steph.
Thank you. Thanks all for coming along. Good evening and welcome to Changing the Game. I would also like to acknowledge that we're gathered on land stolen from the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past and present and express solidarity with their ongoing struggle. So we're here today to talk about trolling, obviously. Specifically what it is, who does it affect, and how does it impact people's lives. Harassment is as old probably as people having opinions. However, the internet has certainly changed the way that we communicate with each other, and it has also had an impact on how we communicate negatively and how we respond to people communicating to us negatively as well. So what happens when people become the target of harassment on the internet? And perhaps more importantly, and I think probably what many of you want to talk about, how do we combat it? How do we fight back? So I just want to let you guys know that this event may contain some content or some stories that may be distressing to some of you. So if please look after yourselves and find someone's hand to grab if you need to. So joining me to talk about all of these issues and more, on my far left is Clem Ford. She is a feminist writer and broadcaster based in Melbourne with a prolific online presence. She's well known for her public battles against trolls. She campaigns strongly and I think a lot of us in this room would think amazingly against victim blaming and gender discrimination. And her book, Fight Like a Girl, was released last year, was it? By Allen and Unwin. Welcome, Clementine. To her right, we have Ray Johnston. She writes about video games, consumer technology, comic books and pop culture. She is a proud Wiradjuri woman who has regular bylines in places like Gizmodo Australia, Kotaku, Kotaku, life hacker, business insider, and pop sugar. She is the host of NITV's The Point and regularly appears on The Project, Today, Sunrise, Today Tonight, The Feed, and national news programs. Welcome, Ray. Maybe I should have checked the bios with you beforehand. And to my immediate left is Leena van Deventer. She is an award-winning writer, game developer, and teacher based in Melbourne. Last year, she published her first book, Game Changers, From Minecraft to Misogyny, with Dan Golding. Her commentary on game development, online culture, and feminism has appeared in publications such as Guardian Australia, Crikey, The Big Issue, and others. She was also on the curatorial advisory committee for ACMI's Codebreakers. Welcome, Leena. And I'm Stephanie Convery, obviously, from Guardian Australia. So I think one of the first things that I thought we would talk about is just how trolling online manifests. So if you've never been in a position where you've had to deal with that kind of barrage of vitriol that comes from people who disagree with you online, it can be a bit hard to kind of envisage what that might actually be like and just how bad it can get. Now, Clem Ford has been the subject of relentless trolling for a long time now, and particularly in response to your career as a feminist writer, Clem. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about an experience of yours that really kind of encapsulates the sort of stuff you've had to deal with.
Thanks, Steph. Just before we start, I just want to... I'm not going to apologise for having to bring my child tonight, but I do want to semi-apologise because I really don't want him to distract from the other amazing women on this panel, but I just didn't have any other options. So that is the reality. So my apologies for that.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get asked that question a lot, and it sort of feels like so much of what I'm known for now is trolling and how I respond to trolls. And there's a part of me that feels like that's, it's obviously very interesting to lots of people, and hopefully I can model some practical ways that people can respond to that. I would like to think that my work is bigger than that, but at the same time, maybe I wouldn't have as much of a platform for that work if I didn't also have this other thing that goes hand in hand with it. I sent, actually, in preparation for this, I sent Ari some slides for... as an example. Oh, sorry, that wasn't my cue to make you show them. But I was just going to say that, it's part of a talk that I give that kind of goes through a whole section section of examples of the kind of trolling that I get. And some of them are just so absurd that they're almost hilarious. The way that people think that you genuinely care whether or not they want to have sex with you, for example. And then others, they've gotten a little bit more personal, or I've experienced them more personally, I suppose, since I had a child, because people obviously bring him into it, which is a good opportunity to ask that if people do take photos that his face happens to be in, if they could just put like a little sticker over it or something, that would be great, because honestly people will just take any opportunity they can get. And so I'll give two extreme examples of trolling, and one is that someone sent me, this is one of my favourite examples, that someone sent me this really, really long email that included an acrostic of my name that was like, cum face, loser, extremely evil, moronic, etc., went on. And then they used evil twice as well, which I quite enjoyed.
So they're talented then.
And then sent this like
Poetry.
really long email that said something about like, geez, your head must be so far up your assistants, or something like that. They made a mistake. And then they resent the email because they realised that ass had auto-corrected to assistant. And so they changed that. They resent the email, and it was like cum bucket fuck Ford or something was the original subject title. And then they resent it with cum bucket fuck Ford, edit. And so that is kind of like what it's so, the insults contained therein are so extreme and ridiculous that for some people receiving that for the first time, they might be like, oh, that's horrendous. But for me, I just felt like it was so absurd. And I like using that as an example of just how ridiculous it can be. But then on the other end of that, someone also said to me a couple of months ago that I will be the reason that my son will kill himself one day. So those are the kinds of love letters that I get.
We've got a couple of other examples here. Lots of them come with eggs, right? Like they're anonymous, semi-anonymous.
Yeah, I think that Twitter's changed the thing now so that there are no more eggs. But they have to have an avatar.
Twitter now has some settings that you can go in and change so that if people don't meet a certain criteria, if they don't have a profile picture, if they don't have a bio, if they don't have certain things, you can hide all of those accounts from your feed.
That's why I don't see them.
You will never
put all those settings in.
You will never see what they tweet to you, and that's available to everyone, not just verified accounts. So that's really useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. That's great. Yeah. So this was. This is just obviously someone set up a fake account. I mean, that's a fairly extreme example of one of the things that a lot of men. I think that this. So this is kind of like a thinly veiled rape threat. I don't ever actually think that the people who send thinly veiled rape threats are actually. I'm never scared that that's going to happen to me. I just think that they enjoy wielding that as a threat. But as so many women on the internet experience as well, I get the converse that you're too ugly to be raped, or you're too fat to be raped, or the only reason that you care about rape so much is because no one would ever rape you. And that's a fairly frequent message that I'll receive. In fact, someone sent it to me a couple of days ago, which kind of, again, I don't really get hugely... I don't think that you could continue to be bombarded with that kind of stuff if you really got genuinely upset about it. It's sort of, I've just become immune to it now. I get upset when I see it happening to other women because I seem to experience it in a different way when I see them saying it to other people. But it infuriates me that one of the things that feminists are so often accused of is painting all men as rapists. Oh, you feminists, you just paint all men as rapists. And actually feminists are the ones that say, well, we demand a standard from men, and we recognise that there are many men in the world who meet that standard, so it's not actually that difficult for you to do. And yet it's people who say things like, well, you're too fat to be raped, or you don't need to worry about rape because you've got a giant gap between your teeth and you have a face like a smashed crab or whatever. Or, women need to have common sense, whatever it is, So I still have that kind of level of indignation and frustration about it, that sometimes it feels like I'm back in the back seat of the car when I'm 8 years old and my brother or my sister is like, I'm not touching you. And you're like, oh, Mom, I'm not touching you. Because that honestly feels like the level of antagonism that you're dealing with sometimes. It's so infuriating, but it's also so difficult to pin down. And they're actually not touching you. So what can you do?
Ray, you had a particularly interesting experience a few years ago on the 11th of April 2013, just to be specific. On your birthday, you tweeted about something that had happened to you at the coffee shop. You said, snarky guy in coffee queue, eyes off my Bioshock Infinite t-shirt, suggests I probably haven't even played it, so I told him the ending.
It was brand new. It just came out that week. He wouldn't have played it yet. I'd had it a couple of weeks beforehand because I was reviewing it. Had the T-shirt from a press event where I was given it because it was literally my job to know about this game. Funnily enough, though, that whole thing was just kind of out of shock. So this happened at a period of time. This is 4 years ago, by the way, and I still get people talking to me about this tweet, responding to that tweet, going, oh, as if you wouldn't know the ending by now. The game's been out for 4 years. Come on, guys.
It's probably the same guys that will attack you for not having reading comprehension or something,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, this game actually came out at a time that was probably what I would call peak fake geek girl. So this is a time where there was a handful of women working in the Australian games industry and media, probably could count them on one hand at that point in time, that were quite prominent and in the media a lot. And there was a lot of combative people that I came up against that needed me to prove my worth. I had a background as an actor. I'd done a bit of modelling. Therefore, you can't possibly have a brain. And as if you've played video games, you can't be a nerd. You don't look like a nerd. Prove yourself to me. I worked really hard to prove myself to a lot of people, and I still do. And it sucks that I've got to do that and that I feel like I've got to do that. But this was an instance where it wasn't just online people that were saying these things to me. This guy was right there. And he was just like looking at me. He did this thing. I'm thinking, what is this guy's problem? It's like 8:30 in the morning.
So many problems.
I'm just getting
so many problems.
Leave me alone. Like, what? And he's just like, bet you haven't even played it. And I'm just like, what? No. Like, because, this is this and this and this and this. Like, basically just trying to prove. I'm not going to spoil it for you all. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
But it came out 4 years ago, right?
Look, if you want to know what I said, I'll tell you afterwards, but I'm not going to do it. I've become that person, known as that person that spoils things for people, and I hate that. So, and his face just kind of dropped, and it was kind of glorious.
Did he get mad?
He didn't get mad. I think he was still kind of in shock, because then they were just like, Ray, and I was like, yep, and grabbed my coffee and just got out of there, walked back around the corner, went home and went, that felt really cool. I'm going to tell my, couple of hundred followers on Twitter at the time about this. They're all in the games industry. They'll think this is hilarious that this has happened, and it just blew up. Blew up to the point where, Will Wheaton was blogging about it. It was really weird. Courtney Draper, who's the voice artist for Elizabeth in the BioShock series, she started talking to me. Like, this is so bizarre. Gail Simone, one of my heroes, writer for Wonder Woman comics, she also started talking about it. And I went, okay, this is amazing. And it was all messages of overwhelming support. Was people going, yeah, you got to stand up to one of these guys in real life. How great is this for you? The notifications kept coming and coming, and I'm like, oof, this is a bit unnerving on my birthday. I'm just going to go have a bath and chill out and turn my phone off for a while. Came back, and there was just so much hate. Just people calling me a liar, an attention seeker, saying that I just made everything up. Apparently at one point it turned into like something that my modelling agency, I've never had a modelling agency, had apparently organised with Irrational Games as promotion for the game. And I'm like, pay me. I didn't even get a free copy of the game or anything. But it was a really kind of confronting experience to see that go from support to hate so quickly. And it does happen so quickly. And there was a long period of time where, you'd Google my name, because I Google my name. I got to see what's out there. I'm sorry. I do it. You all do it too, admit it. And there were forums that I would normally frequent and visit and chat to people about tech and games and all that sort of thing, debating over what my motivations were and, just disparaging me and calling me horrible names. And there was an article.
Did you kill him or just embarrass him?
Right?
Right? How serious should we take this? A man had his feelings hurt. This cannot stand.
Right? But did he really, Leena? Yeah. Did he really have his feelings hurt? Because you can't trust what a woman says.
Is he even real?
Did all of that, did that barrage of attention kind of bleed into your personal life, into your real life world? I mean,
oh yeah,
did it have an impact on your career? What kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. There was good and bad. It's actually pretty cool to have. I had a lot of people at that point that then heard about me because of that I didn't need to prove myself to in real life, because I'd kind of already done that online. So it did have some real world advantages that this whole thing happened, but. Yeah.
That was not the motivation, though, obviously.
No, not at all. Gosh, I wish I had thought about that earlier. But no, the attention from people online did get to a point where I very much retreated from everything. I avoided conflict online. Still to this day, I will avoid conflict online quite dramatically. I'll remove myself from situations. I'll never throw myself in the front line. I'll never do what these guys can do because I'm scared. And it's horrible. I was getting emails and messages. There was one email in particular from a guy who detailed to me the particular route that my son takes to get to school.
Wow.
And that was when I went, too far, come back, this isn't worth it. There are ways that I can support women in this industry, and there are ways that I can do this without putting my family at risk, which is ridiculously what I was doing by just existing online.
One of the most high-profile incidents, and probably one of the most long-running incidents in this sort of sphere was Gamergate, which I think probably most of you in the room are aware of. Maybe, Leena, you could give us a quick précis of what happened. Quick. Because it did go on for a long time.
Yeah. Idiot's Guide to Gamergate 101, go.
Okay.
Yeah, and what it actually was and who was affected. And we have video when you get to key point.
So Gamergate is basically, despite what you may have heard, domestic violence outsourced to a mob. So there was a guy, we won't say his name, we'll just pretend he's not real because he shouldn't be, who had a problem with being dumped by his ex-girlfriend and decided to go about destroying her life in the best way he could. So he started spreading rumours. He wrote this great manifesto online because he knew that she was a game developer and she already had ruffled some feathers, and they already had some people who thought what she made weren't real games, so therefore she was an imposter. She was an easy target. Yeah, all games are real games. And he basically sicked a mob onto her. And there was splashback for other women in game development as well, and critics and journalists. He accused her of sleeping with a journalist for a good review, of which does not exist. They still can't find the proof, like the review does not exist, so clearly that's not true. And it was basically a way of trying to control her and abuse her once she'd left him, but with the help of thousands of idiots on the internet, basically. And it ended up sort of amassing into a general movement of disdain for women taking up space in games at all. So it went from this small thing to a larger movement, which incorporated critics and journalists like Lee Alexander got a lot of flack. Anyone who identified as a woman got a lot of flack, but Anita Sarkeesian in particular, along with Zoe, got probably the most out of anyone, because at the time Anita was asking us to critically look at video games and think about how they might be better. Oh, how dare you burn the witch? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, terrible. You're asking me to think about the stuff that I like? No, like that is too far. I will not do that. She came under fire as well, and it became this culture war, they describe it as now, between the boys who didn't want to share their toys and the women who just wanted to exist and play with the toys that they've been playing with since they were kids as well.
So we've got a little bit of Anita's video to show you, just to give you some sense of the very basic literary criticism she was making of these games.
It's not controversial.
No. And probably won't work now.
Maybe the middle.
It's because it's a panel about something tech related.
Yeah.
Always happens.
Have we got any
Every
men
time.
around that can
Every
help
time.
us? That'd be great.
I'm doing the right thing. No, okay.
Maybe that was the placeholder.
Oh, here we go.
They certainly didn't invent the damsel in distress. The popularity of their Save the Princess formula essentially set the standard for the industry. The trope quickly became the go-to motivational hook for developers, as it provided an easy way to tap into adolescent male power fantasies in order to sell more games to young straight boys and men.
Help me! Help me! Help me! Help me! Help! Please help me, Blake!
Throughout the 80s and 90s, the trope became so prevalent that it would be nearly impossible to mention them all. There were literally hundreds of examples showing up in platformers, side-scrolling beat-em-ups, first-person shooters, and role-playing games alike. take a quick moment to clear up some common misconceptions about this trope. As a plot device, the damsel in distress is often grouped with other separate tropes, including the designated victim, the heroic rescue, and the smooch of victory. However, it's important to remember that these associated conventions are not necessarily a part of the damsel in distress trope itself. So the woman in question may or may not play the victim role for the entire game or series, while our brave hero may or may not be successful in his rescue attempt. All that is really required to fulfill the damsel in distress trope is for a female character to be reduced to a state of helplessness from which she requires rescuing by a typically male hero for the benefit of his story arc.
Nothing too out of the ordinary, right? She's basically just saying, can we analyse how certain tropes in video games may be influencing things for the worst and maybe perpetuating harmful stereotypes?
So what happened to her as a consequence of that?
Lots of things.
In a nutshell.
She was abused constantly online. And I mean constantly. I mean bots were involved so that it could be 24/7. She had to go to a friend's house for a while just in case they knew her address. It got really, really hairy. And probably the peak of that was when she was doing a speaking engagement at Utah State University, I think it was. And someone threatened the worst school shooting in American history if she turned up. And they have concealed carry laws in Utah that they said, we're not going to stop people bringing their guns if they want to bring their guns.
God, women are just so emotional.
I know. She's so irrational and unreasonable. So she said, well, I'm not going to speak then. And that was probably, I think, I can't speak for her, of course, but the peak of sort of the realness of it when it came out of the offline and into the real world is that she had to actually make the call. Should I talk and maybe get shot? Or should I not talk?
For a video game
about
criticism.
Video games. Yeah. Yep.
Ray, you've worked in video games for a long time. How has it changed for women online post Gamergate? Like, what has the impact been for how we interact with people?
It's been huge. I don't think I know any women that haven't had to reevaluate the things that they write about, the things that they make, how they present themselves online, whether they even choose to interact on, things like Twitter. It's all very easy to say, just don't go on it. It's fine. But it's a crucial networking tool. For a lot of people in this industry. It's how you connect with people. It's how you market your game. It's how you market your articles. It's every facet that you can work in games. You do need social media these days, unfortunately. So just logging off isn't an option.
No, neither is not going outside after 9 p.m. in a short skirt. Like
exactly.
It's the same bad advice and it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I think pre-Gamergate, you dealt with the fake geek girl thing and needing to prove yourself, which in comparison is absolutely nothing to this. Every woman became a target all of a sudden. It was like, if you're existing in video games, if you're criticising video games, if you're writing about them, reviewing them, everything you did was picked apart by a mob of people. I think I've maybe said the word Gamergate online once, ever, because I just held back from everything. I just did not engage in anything. I had people constantly tweeting me about it, wanting to get my opinion. Just want to see what you think about this Gamergate thing.
Please refrain from using the hashtag if you are live tweeting tonight,
gosh,
because you are in for a world of pain if you do.
Also,
use it
or use it and see.
Well, that's the thing. People would do that though. They'd want to engage with you about it. Even in a positive way. Even in a let's talk about this and how bad it is, or positive relatively. And you'd be like, could you please not add that hashtag? Please don't drag me into this. And it really sucks that was a moment that you can't, have solidarity, or you didn't feel like you could be there to back up other women. Well, I didn't feel like I could, which is awful. But yeah, it did change a lot. I feel like now things are starting to calm down a little bit.
Posses are springing up.
Yeah.
Let's just reiterate, this was 2 years ago now.
2014 is when
the
manifesto broke.
So now it's just 3 years later, it's starting to die down.
Yeah, 3 years later, it's starting to die down.
Not for Anita and Zoe.
No.
No, absolutely
no.
not. But that wider kind of witch hunt of any women involved in games has kind of been dulled a little. So they're getting tired. Sorry, Leena.
Not for me. But
I think they're getting
I wrote a
tired.
book they didn't like, but they don't read, so I'm really lucky. But yeah,
They do read 10,000 word manifestos.
I wish they read anything other than headlines.
Just on that, sorry, I read the best tweet about Milo Yiannopoulos' book when it was cancelled before it was cancelled by Simon and Schuster, and this like phenomenal book deal was announced. Terrible PR move, and someone wrote, "Why would you release a book of Milo Yiannopoulos' words? His audience doesn't read. This book would have been better released as a 3-hour YouTube video."
Yeah. Because they do 4-hour long YouTube videos about how much they hate Anita's
Have you had them made about you? I've got quite a few YouTube videos made out there about me.
There's one that calls me a cultural Marxist.
I take that as a compliment personally, but
It's on brand.
Genuinely baffled at the amount of time that they have. Like,
do they not work?
You need to work more. Like, I barely have time to read these tweets, let alone think about them.
But he's coming to Australia soon. Lucky us.
Yes, Milo obviously being key figure in this online drive to hate women.
Yep.
We'll talk a little bit about, I think, a little later. But I'm really interested in kind of picking apart who these people actually are. And I wanted to just sort of talk a little bit about a friend that I have who will remain nameless, who is a really, really nice guy and somebody who I would turn to in an emergency in a minute. Hugely supportive of the women in his life, incredibly selfless in a lot of ways, very good politics, all sorts of things. When he gets online, he becomes a fuckstick. Like he's just a completely different person. He is one of those people who will make like what used to be egg, avatars on Twitter and troll people. Like he would send those anonymous stupid messages and you'd be like, what are you doing, mate? Who are you? Like which one of these personalities is the real you? And it makes you question the sincerity of not only, anybody that you know who kind of engages in online behavior like that, but also the sincerity of those people online. Like how much of it is real? How much of this personality that they're putting forward online is real? Clem, what do you think? You've seen so much of this. How much of it do you think they would back up in real life?
Well, it's interesting because my friend Anna works at ACMI. She's very nicely taken my baby outside. So thanks, Anna. She said to me that extra security was booked for this event because of the subject matter. And I was like, oh, that's very nice, but I don't think it'll be necessary. Maybe it would be necessary in America where they're allowed to bring guns into a theatre. But my experience is that people are very, very loud online and not a single person has ever turned up at an event. Not to yell at me, not even just to sit there like quietly seething and then take over the question and answer section at the end. I think that the number one, it's funny because I agree that they have a lot of time and they have a lot of like very specific interests and hobbies that take up a lot of their focus and attention. But I also think that they're incredibly lazy. They don't have any follow through. The difference between all of the women sitting on this panel tonight and the people who make a habit out of trolling is that all the people sitting on this panel tonight actually follow through on the things that they believe in. We have beliefs and we also have action, and they don't really have anything further than what it is that they fiercely believe in online. I think that, one of the things, that, particularly hearing both of you, Ray and Leena, speak, one of the things that, I mentioned earlier that it doesn't affect me when people say horrible things to me, but I do feel very affected by it when I hear it happening to other people. Same. Because you kind of like, you perceive it differently when it's happening to you. You perceive your defense mechanisms to be stronger than other people's, which is not to take away from other people, but just because you see other people as being more human than the robot you've had to become. But I just get overwhelmed by the amount of like impotent rage out there. This terrible fear that so many men seem to experience about the ways that what they already perceive to be the limited power that they have is being further taken away by women. Which is not to say that I think that all trolls are men, but most of them are, I think. And it's also not to say that I think that all trolls are, I would never use these terms, but to borrow the parlance of the trolls, are beta. But I think that maybe I'm really intrigued by the ones who perceive, whose greatest grievance it seems to me to be their inability to actually measure up to the patriarchal standards of masculinity in the world, that they feel inferior to what it is they've been told proper, powerful alpha masculinity is supposed to be. And rather than actually joining in any kind of struggles that try and dismantle that, instead they just get angry at the women in their lives, or the women who they see around them who are being given power, never earning power, but just given power because of their looks that they won't share with them. This kind of like, it's weird to me to think of the fact that I said to Ray earlier on that my involvement is gaming, is really enjoying playing King's Quest. It's good. So I'm not like in the gaming community, but it seems to me from as an outsider looking in, the pop cultural stereotype of what a heterosexual man in gaming would want would be like an awesome woman who can game.
Right. And then they're presented with it and it's like, nah,
and that's
can't
like
be real.
reflected in like movies and stuff. But,
Absolutely.
But in real life, it seems to be experienced as an attack on them.
Yeah. There's actually some studies that have shown that the vitriol online, while playing online, to women is increased when she's beating him.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it is an insecurity in some ways.
Yeah.
And it seems to be because they're literal losers that they can't handle it and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, but also, to kind of respond to Steph's question about like what's the reality and what's sincere and what's not sincere. I think that there are some people who do probably troll as a form of entertainment, and that's why you have to be very careful. I mean, I make jokes even about men living in their parents' basements, but I think that the majority of people who make a habit of trolling people online probably quote unquote normal and have jobs and families and friends.
It's an art. Back when the internet started, it was one of the funnest things you could do, is to trick someone into thinking you're sincere.
Yeah.
And then go,
there was a whole season of South Park about this.
It was perfection. Like you say to a celebrity like, oh, what's up, dog? And they go, I don't know. Like you say, oh, what are your feelings about up, dog? And they go, what's up, dog? And you're like, I don't know. What's up, dog? What's up with you? Like that kind of trolling is different.
So that's what trolling used to be.
That's what trolling used to be. It used to be tricking someone into thinking you're sincere, and now it's become just criminal activity.
Which is why when I do talk about trolling, I actually steer clear of calling it trolling. I call it harassment because that's what it is.
And there needs to be that differentiation between like criminal activity,
and playing a practical
people
joke
being
with
mean
someone
online.
Well, and that's something that a lot of people don't seem to realise in Australia, is that it's a crime to use a carriage service to menace or harass.
Yep.
And in fact, when you explain that, I contacted a 15-year-old boy who was harassing me online, and it's a good reminder, and explained to him, this is actually a crime, and I was a bit heavy-handed about it. I was like, this is a crime punishable by up to, I think I didn't lie.
10 years.
I didn't lie. I said it's a crime punishable by up to 10 years in prison and a $30,000 fine, I think it is. And I was like, you could be in big trouble, Buster. And immediately he was it's not like he sort of like really backed down and was like, I'm so sorry, please don't tell my parents. But he did kind of like back down a little bit, and then it sort of became about how I sort of got this anyway because he was making these videos about me and posting them on Facebook. But I think that he was trying to show off to his mates and get points from other men, and I reckon that like at its heart, that's probably what a lot of this is about, is how
gaining approval.
How far you can go. And so on that note, sometimes when people say to me, are you ever scared? My response is usually, 99% of the time, I would not consider it to be a threat that anyone would actually follow through on anything that they'd said. I'm not afraid. But there is a little part of there's a little part of me in there that thinks, what about the person that just wants to like prove a point to the men?
I'm scared all the time. I had a guy who had dedicated a whole blog to how shit I was, and he would come up to every event that I did. This is a couple of years ago, and he would sit front row, sunnies on, and a box on his lap. And I have no idea what was in the box, but that was the point, was to make me flustered and was to make me scared.
Did you ever ask people to not let him in?
Yeah, I gave his photo to security sometimes and said, like, if this guy turns up, just don't let him in. He'll have a box and some sunnies. You'll know him. You'll see him a mile away. But his blog, as I seem to get sort of a bit more prominent in so far that I am, his blog started dying down a little bit, and it's been about 2 years since he's posted anything or since he's turned up to anything. But he works in security.
That's ironic.
And we share a lot of mutual friends still.
What?
And so it got to the point where I was like, I'm cutting all of y'all off.
Yeah.
If you don't.
How can you, so that's the other thing. Like, how can people be like, I don't want to get involved?
Oh, he hasn't done anything wrong to me.
He works in security
Box,
and he's
No.
like clearly unhinged. So they're all terrified as well. So it's kind of like.
But maybe that's like a more specific to the gaming industry because it's perceived to be, which is not necessarily the reality, of course, but it's perceived to be a hyper-masculine environment, and that women getting involved are like, they're stealing space or they're encroaching somehow, whereas it's less likely that a guy would turn up to a feminist event because A, men don't come to a feminist event en masse anyway, but B, like, it's not a space that's They think that feminists are stealing things from them, but the space itself is not something that once belonged to men that women are suddenly like now infiltrating.
Well, I mean, even if you look at how video game expos have traditionally been run over the years, you've got booth babes there constantly. These are the sorts of things that are disappearing and people are kind of fighting against. And I think this is like their kind of death throes, screaming into the void of don't take our pretty shiny things, you know, the women are to look at, not to make it, basically, you know, and they're seeing this scene change from, you know, all throughout the 80s and early 90s, you know, the way that video games were marketed. You know, you've got literally, go find some of these ads. They're hilarious. Not really, but you know what I mean. You've got a woman in a bikini draped over an arcade machine. You know, they were there as accessories. They weren't, you know, the people making them or playing them. But they were.
But even 5 years before that, the personal computer was marketed with a mum and her daughter playing together.
Right. And then there was like, this whole shift.
And the market crashed and we all shat our pants and, you know, changed our mind.
Yeah.
And put all of our eggs into one basket, which was dudes.
So there are a lot of people, I think, that we can agree.
Basically, it's quite concise, but, you know, it's a bit more complicated than that.
Sorry to hijack the conversation, but there are a lot of, I think, I wanted to dig into this a bit further, this difference between what happens in online and what happens in real life, because there have been some pretty serious political implications from these online movements, in particular, like 1,000 people mobilising at Charlottesville on the far right, that is pretty clear came out of these sorts of things. How strong do you think that connection is between, you know, this en masse kind of trolling of women, this like hatred of women online, and these far right movements?
I think once behaviour that was once considered unacceptable is modelled as acceptable, all these little worms come out of the woodwork and go, oh, cool, we can be racist now. Awesome. It wasn't acceptable for me to be like that before, but now I can because Trump is. So now I'm going to go out with my tiki torches that I bought at IKEA, and I'm going to go and, you know, because I'm a threatened guy, you know, and go and make this statement. But the thing that they have in common with, say, the Gamergaters is it's this cohort of men that have been convinced by sometimes these ringleaders like Milo and sometimes, you know, Kernovich and all the other, you know, people who make these huge YouTube videos, that they've been convinced that they are oppressed or that a white genocide is coming, or that the immigrants are stealing our jobs while simultaneously being on welfare, which is quite impressive when you think about it. It's Schrodinger's immigrant. So, like, they've been convinced that they are somehow losing power, somehow being disempowered by all these other people. So therefore now they have to act, but they don't feel comfortable acting until it's modeled for them. And I think Trump was a model, and I think Milo was a model, and I think, you know, the kid, the 15-year-old kid who was making videos about you, Clem, was probably trying to be a model, you know, so that he could feel big and feel strong and have a following, and then he'd have, you know, he wouldn't feel so bad. And I think how we're failing these men in a way, or how men are failing these men, because it's not women's job to look after men, is there's no place for these. Well, they are now. There's like there's Life After Hate, I think, is somewhere where people who used to be in neo-Nazis can go and get support and be sort of reformed and get a lot of laser tattoo removal, I'd imagine.
They do some great cover-up jobs. I've seen documentaries. It's fantastic.
You know, there's not enough support out there for the men who go, this has actually crossed a line that I'm not quite comfortable with. And I like these guys, and I feel like I'm part of a group at a time when I'm really lonely and feel disenfranchised. So I guess I'll just kind of go with them and go get my tiki torch and my white polo shirt. But I think once it's modelled, it's copied, and that's where it's got to be interrupted.
But it's also there's a fever, you know, and I think everyone in this room who uses the internet or has used the internet has experienced that. You know, there's that comic that's like, come to bed, honey. I'll be there in a minute. Someone is wrong on the internet.
Yep.
And there's not. I mean, like there are people who would argue that there's a thin line between that and trolling. You know. I don't think that they're the same, but I think that the way that we engage with arguments online is very different to the way that we engage with arguments in real life, which is weird because I also think that the lines between online and offline world are becoming increasingly blurred. You can't, as you said, you can't just get off the internet. You can't just log off. But that distance that you feel, like the adrenaline spike that's been tracked, and the way that, you know, the dopamine rush that we get from scrolling, and that sense that, like, oh, that person I'm fighting with just left another comment. I'm gonna.
Or you see the dots. The dots. They're typing. Yeah. How dare they be typing?
And no one wants to be the one that, you know. I I say it like even I like. No, I'm like terrible at this stuff. You know, that I feel it takes like such a focus on patience to be like, just let them have the last word, you know?
No.
So then like,
we're not here to let them have the last word.
When it transfers over into real life, you know, it's illogical. I'm not providing an excuse for it at all. But I don't think, and I know you weren't saying that most people were characterised by like, I don't have a place to go that will help support me out of white supremacy.
I don't feel sorry for them. No.
But no. I think that that's sort of like, that's where that blur comes in, is that the fever is there, and I know that later on we're going to get to like the ways that the internet respond positively to this stuff, but in the same way that the internet has had the amazing capacity to connect marginalized communities across the world, not just in a way that increases their power, but also prevents traditional forms of media from being able to silence them and say that resistance no longer exists. The same thing is happening for hate groups who spur each other on, who like feed each other just bullshit. And I mean, the lies that were being told about you, Ray, you know, that it's so easy for that then to become the truth. All you need is one person online who's speaking to a massive group of people who are intent on hating you to say, well, actually, I was there in the coffee shop when Ray claims that this thing happened. And what actually happened was the guy asked her about her Bioshock t-shirt, and she couldn't respond to him, or whatever like story they want to make up. And then it doesn't matter that the same people who are like, well, unless you provide us with video evidence that it happened, then we can't believe it. They'll just run with whatever like alternative story is thrown up there. So I feel like beyond trolling and as part of the bubble of like hate groups that are kind of popping up, one of the things that concerns me even more than people just being assholes on the internet is just how there's no such thing as truth anymore.
And rhetoric and like convincing someone through fact and argument and the traditional, canons of rhetoric. You would think we'd be better at fighting online when we have the entire repository of human information at our fingertips. Like my argument logically
You mad?
should be better with my computer in front of me than just talking to you now. And yet you get all these people who just can't string sentences together going, well, I think you're fat. And you're like, well,
that'll show her.
Yeah, thanks, Aristotle. Like,
Ray, we were talking a little earlier about parallels that you've seen between things like Charlottesville and like these online groups online. Online groups online.
Online groups
in case
online.
you didn't realise that they were online.
Very online.
And things that have been happening in Australia. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are stark similarities with... I don't know if you all heard, because the media is not very good at telling important things. Elijah Dowdy, a 14-year-old boy who was run over intentionally by a white man in his 40s who ended up getting 3 years for dangerous driving. He was spurred on by a Facebook group, which if you go to this Facebook group, which still exists to this day, it doesn't breach Facebook's guidelines for being a hate group. There's 17 million people on Facebook in Australia. There's 7,000 people globally that moderate those reports that you put through. So that's an indication. There are some incredibly hateful comments there, specifically targeting Aboriginal kids in that community, describing in graphic detail the ways that these people in this community would kill them, torture them, and nothing is being done about it. And it's creating this real world, the racial tension in that town is incredible and awful, and it's just such a horrible place for people to be at the moment. And it's the kind of thing, like you were saying, these are the kinds of thoughts that you think are horrible and horrendous, and why would you even share that? But when you can go online to a group where everyone will support you and back up your awful thinking and horrible idea, and it spurs real world violence. And it's happening here. It's not happening in some disconnected place across the other side of the world. It's happening in Australia.
So I guess the obvious follow-on question is, what do we do about it? Now that we've gone down into the...
Solve all the problems. This panel right here.
Anne Friedman wrote this article a few years ago where she talks about the experience of like feeling unsafe online, but also simultaneously insisting that it's no big deal. And this sort of the sense that she had of this that there was some importance for her sense of self to be ignoring the trolls. Whereas I think anybody who's really been in that experience, it's very difficult to ignore. Yep. So let's start with the assumption that we're not going to ignore them. We're going to try to do something about them.
Safe bet.
I think. Clem, I want to throw to you because I'm sorry we keep going on about this, but you're known for the way you respond to some trolls. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what your strategies have been and what you found works for you.
Yeah, well, kind of touching again, I guess, on this sort of the circular way that people who are invested in maintaining the power of trolls and maintaining the power of alt-right narrative, the circular way that they talk to you is why you hear things like, well, just block them, just ignore them. And then when you ignore them or you block them, then they say, censoring free speech. What happened to free speech?
doesn't have free speech.
What happened to free speech? Oh, you just can't debate them. You just can't debate them. So there's no right thing for you to do. And the assumption, of course, that, I do respond to a proportion of the people who troll me, but actually most of them, on the whole, I would say the vast majority, I just immediately block and just ban and delete and just can't be bothered with them. I select a few lucky ones to be dealt with publicly. An
example to the others, right?
Just whoever takes my fancy that day. And the most common thing that I do is I just screenshot and post on my page. And I will also acknowledge that, my page has 180,000 followers, and that's not a platform that most people who are dealing with trolls necessarily has. So for me to be able to do that is, I've got a lot more privilege than other people do in being able to respond in that way. Funnily enough, the same people who would argue that banning and deleting them is akin to censorship don't really like it when you actually further the audience for their work. I just sort of say, well, I just think that, I just appreciated what you had to say so much that I wanted to give it to a bigger platform, But of course, that's not the intention. The intention is for you to feel small and targeted and unsafe, and for you to possibly shut your account down. So I do that in the main. People have said to me, well, you should go to the police with this one. You've got to go to the police with this one. Doesn't work. I mean, honestly, if I was to go to the police every day or if I was to go to the police every time someone sent me something that is the equivalent of breaking the law in Australia, I'd always be at the police, and I'd always be being disappointed. So that doesn't work, and I just feel like I don't know that necessarily the way that I respond is the best way. It's just the best way for me to respond, and it's to show, firstly, to the people who think that they can get away with sending me things either publicly or privately, that they're not going to get away with it, that I'm not afraid of them, that I'm not going to sit there and feel small the way that they want me to, that I will share their words with other people, and I'll put them in the line of fire of 180,000 people and whoever they share it with. And they can see what it feels like to have people send them horrible messages to their inbox. They can feel what it feels like to be isolated and targeted and put under a spotlight. And actually, all those screenshots came from a talk that I do about trolling called Hate Mail, and I'll be really quick, but one of the things that I say to people is that, for me, I found that one of the most effective responses is to shift the spotlight from you onto them. And you can do that by sharing their words, by publicly shaming them. You'll also have to be prepared to deal with the fact that people will say that you're just as bad, if not worse, than the person who sent you the message, because you're responding like a bully. I've been told that I cyberbully people because I just share what they've said to me. But I also think that it works in individual ways, like if you're dealing with people in the offline world. Some people in this room may know this, that one of the best things that you can do if you want to respond to something that someone said that's like sexist or racist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever it might be, but you're in a situation where you either don't feel like you can escalate it with your anger, or you feel vulnerable in some way, or also you just don't feel like being the one that has to explain why those things are wrong, that you can say, there's two things you can do. And the first is that you can say, oh, I didn't hear that. Can you repeat that for me? And then get them to repeat it. It works in the sort of like the casual kind of expressions of hate speech. It was just a joke expressions of hate speech. I didn't hear that. Can you repeat it? And then get them to repeat it again. And then hopefully the second time that they repeat it, they're like, oh, actually, I don't think I should say that again. Don't worry about it. Or you can say, I don't get it. Can you explain it to me?
That's my favourite.
Yeah, can you explain to me why
Asians can't drive?
And
you go,
what? Why?
I saw one this morning. Wow, that was I don't get it. Why is that funny?
Did you hear that? Is this peer reviewed?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
But the reason it's effective.
Did I see a unicorn this morning?
The reason it's effective, and the reason why that approach is effective, and you can apply it in so many areas of your life, is that one of the frustrations that I experience, that I know a lot of people experience when they are saying, like, you can't say that is whatever it might be, is that, oh, well, come on, calm down. And then you end up feeling like you have to explain and justify your anger, and you are inevitably gaslit in the situation. You inevitably feel, even though you're not overreacting, you're told you're overreacting, and you feel like the room is against you because the spotlight's on you, because you're the one who's being forced to prove why it's wrong. Yeah. So shift the spotlight to them and force them to prove why it's right. And that, I think, is a really effective way to give you some sense of power in the situation, and also to make them feel what it feels like to be disempowered, to make them feel what it feels like to be shamed.
I'm interested also to think a little bit about this in terms of the individual versus the group. Many of us, we all work in the media and industry, and often as freelancers. One of the things that really struck me when I was thinking about this topic was that once upon a time, if as a result of your work, so as a result of your work in video games, as a result of your work in the media, you were attacked for that work, you could call on your workplace for support. You know, that's why we have unions, right? They're there to help us in a situation in our work environment where we are under a threat or something has gone wrong. But we don't think about trolling as a workplace hazard. And I wonder, maybe that's something that we should be doing. Like, what can a lot of us are freelancers, so we're not necessarily protected by a workplace structure in the same way that we would be if we were, for myself, I'm in a newsroom, right? There is a structure there. That protects me to a certain extent from people turning up at, the office. There are security people there, who will stop somebody coming in if they think they're a threat. But if you work from home, or, you're only on contract really for a really short time or whatever, what are the structures in place to protect you? How do you pull people around you to help you kind of... The internet can be a really alienating place, right? Because sometimes it feels like it's you against everybody else, particularly if you're the subject of a pile-on. So I guess I wanted to kind of throw that out there, particularly for you, Ray and Leena, who work in video games. What is your industry doing things to better protect the women that they employ? What could they be doing?
They're not doing much at all. Yes, they're not doing much at all. We don't have a union. We can sort of elbow our way into some other unions sometimes, depending on our skill set, which I recommend people do. A couple of years ago, I'm going there. All right, I'm doing it. I'm strapped in. A couple of years ago, the head of our peak industry body, who would be one of those people who would be, in the position to be responsible for workplace safety and whatnot, was asked publicly by a journalist what he was going to do about the shockingly low number of women in the Australian games industry. At the time, it was 8.7% of game developers were women. And he said, absolutely nothing. Publicly, in a publication.
So lots of gender equity happening there. Yeah.
So that didn't feel great. That didn't make me feel supported by my industry body. That didn't make me feel like I could go to that person and say, hey, I'm being abused at work. Do you think you can help me with that? I have zero confidence that he could, or that would want to, or that would give a shit. And I don't think it's acceptable, A, as for like a human being just to operate on that level, but B, it's so easy to have risk management things in place to help us. The resources out there are amazing. Zoe didn't just go through all this pain and then go under a rock. She set up an organisation to help people who are dealing with being trolled en masse. She's got reports and one pages to take to your employer to say, I'm being trolled, here's what you can do, here's what you need to know, and here's what I'm going to do. She's made it so easy that there is literally no excuse for a union, a peak industry body, an employer, an activist, anyone to just be like, here's the plan, just in case things go bad, because they probably will, because there's women in the room.
Not because of the women, because of the men responding to the women.
Because people don't like women. So, the bare minimum is so easy. There's like 5 resources that Crash Override have that are printable. You can have them in 5 seconds. And if you don't have them in your organisation, especially as a peak industry body, fuck you. Do better. Do better. Like, you've got to. We're stuffed without you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think something that I've found, because we have had that lack of support, I'm incredibly lucky in the role that I'm in now. I'm a full-time journalist. I have the protections you were speaking of. I've had someone send me, death threats, rape threats, all that sort of just standard stuff on Twitter. And they said that they were going to show up to the office. So increased security, incredibly lucky. As Leena was saying, those protections don't exist outside of those bigger organisations. And I think what that has, forced women to do, but also it's a positive. We've really come together. Mm-hmm. We look out for each other. We've got each other's backs. We have groups where we support each other.
I was going to say, you have structures, don't you?
You've
made them, yeah.
We make them amongst ourselves. Leena started Widget for women to come together and share their experiences and support each other.
Any broadband in the house?
Broadband.
Hey.
I'm working on a mentorship program at the moment called The Working Lunch, which is launching next year, and it's about providing, female role models for, women and non-binary people in the games industry to be able to go, oh, that's someone that I can turn to that will understand what I'm going through, that can guide me, that can help put things into perspective and back me up. And we don't need to be throwing ourselves, it's incredible that you guys do this and throw yourselves out there when I'm too scared to. But there's other things that you can do as well if you don't feel like that's something you can handle, and looking after yourself is so important.
Want to acknowledge, I don't want to interrupt you while trying to point this out, but you're a woman of colour, it is scarier for you. We have a position of privilege in which us going into a conversation and getting shitty at someone, we are at less risk, statistically. So, don't feel bad for not being there for your sisterhood. This is the part where we've got your back, and, you don't have to if you're too scared or if you don't want to.
I'll not apologise for that, and I'll take it. And I've got privilege in myself that I'm white passing. So, it continues in layers. It's huge. I get it, and hang on, what was my train of thought?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No. We band together and there are other things that you can do
We band together and we support each other, and that exists. And it sometimes feels like a bit of a secret club because, one of the damaging things about this patriarchal society that we live in, because colonisation was matriarchal before, is that we're conditioned to think that there's limited roles for women in industries like tech and video games. We've invented programming. It's ridiculous. And we're not all fighting for those roles. There's not certain number of spots for female games journalists to write about women. Everyone can do it. There's not certain marketing roles for women in games. They're all artists. They're all this. Women are working across every facet of this industry, and we are not competition. We are support for each other. So there's this kind of mental hurdle that some people have to get past when society's conditioned to see everyone as, competing for the very limited amount of work that we have here, when in fact we have strength in numbers and we can just kick butt all together.
And one of the things that scares the men who hate women so much and target women in particular industries so much is the idea that women secretly collude together.
Oh, absolutely.
They do.
That's why I love it so much.
Yeah, I've actually got an email, a specific email address in my workplace that just goes to all the women. Mm-hmm. And a couple of the guys got wind of it, and they were like, well, what are you talking about? On the
None of your business.
Do you talk about the guys? And it's like, no. We talk about when we're meeting next and what amazing, woman from whatever business is going to come and have a chat to us and inspire us. It's not all about you.
They can't conceive of a space in which they don't have not just a role, but a dominance.
Yeah,
and I said earlier that I made that not especially great joke about men not generally coming to feminist events, but you can see that whenever women say anything about we're going to have a women's only space here, or this event is women's only. Sexist.
Yep.
Double standards.
Yep.
Why can't men come? Got to work together. Blah blah blah. And then if you don't say anything, if you don't specify that it's a women's only space, it'll end up being pretty much women's only anyway, because it's only the thought that they might be excluded that makes them so angry. Because when the invitation is open, very, very few of them bother to actually follow through. I know that we were sort of heading to a really positive note there, but
we also have to head to questions. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really, really quickly, because I just thought of it when you were talking about what responsibility does the media have or industry have. And I think that it would be remiss to not mention how there are certain arms of the media that are not only responding or not only wooing the alt-right, but also feeding the alt-right. And when you think, I think in particularly in this country, the Australian, the way that, for example, if you're talking about trolling, the way that the Australian went after Yasmin Abdel-Majid for her comments, for her very understandable and sensible and compassionate comments, and continue to go after her. She just wrote an article for Teen Vogue in America where she talked about how she tried to be, it's an excellent article, go look it up. She talked about how she tried to be the model minority because she thought that would make people think differently about Muslims and women, and Muslim women of colour in particular. But it didn't work because, of course, the moment that she transgressed what people, the gratitude people expect the model minority to show is the moment that the backlash starts. The Australian printed an article about her writing that and carefully did it in a way that initially it seemed like they were just reporting that she'd just written this piece, and they just sort of like cherry picked some bits from it, and then finished by pointing to, you know, stirring people. This is a woman who was literally driven out of the country by the way that people were harassing her online, who had to change her phone number, had to move house, was like threatened with death and rape by people who actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they could follow through. And as left, she's given them what they want, and they still demand their pound of flesh from her, you know. And so the complicity and the culpability that traditional forms of media have in this country in being driving factors of the harassment that women in particular experience has to be pointed out. You know, the fact that columnists like Tim Blair use their paid blog posts to write horrendous articles and commentary about, you know, women and minorities in this country, and never gets called out for it. I mean, one of the things that he has written, he's got a particular fascination with me. One of the things that he's written about me before was he just published a blown up photograph of my face that's one of his followers, maybe him, had taken from my Instagram account of me on holiday. And I've got a mustache, you know, I've got hair on my face. Yeah, I should kill myself, I guess, but I've got hair on my face.
How dare you have a body?
How dare I have hair on my face? And he blew it up so that you could see the little mustache on the corners of my lips. And he just put it under the headline transitioning, and suggested that because of the hair on my face that I was I hated men so much because I wanted to secretly be one, and I was transitioning. So not only was he using like horrible transphobia to you know, do that to his followers so that they would just fizz them up about me, but he just did it with like no regard for the fact that he was just using horrible transphobic hate speech as well, you know, that what would be the big deal if I was, you know, but this is, he's like, oh, I can use that issue, and I can use this one, and I can just set the bomb in the middle.
On that note, does anybody have any questions?
They get paid for that. It's awful.
Oh, by the way, I reserve the right to cut you off if you talk for longer than 30 seconds.
So I was wondering if any of you have ever actually sought legal help in the past and found it actually to be effective, or actually felt supportive by the police, because I've encountered that in the past and nothing. So I was really wondering if it was ever actually working.
No. No, it doesn't work. I've never had positive interaction with police with reporting anything that's ever happened to me. I've always been disbelieved in every step of the way, and I'm talking about stuff that's happened online and stuff that's happened in real life. So there is a fundamental lack of trust and lack of compassion, and just, the whole system is not really set up to believe women, to believe women of colour, to believe anyone that's had anything happen to them that they deem a bit too difficult.
Yeah, I think it's the too hard basket.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks. Do they have to be in Australia to be charged under the using a carriage service?
Yes.
To menace.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the Telecommunications Act of 2008. Yeah, and we're lucky that we've got it. Britain's got a similar one, a use of a postal service to make a threat or to menace or harass. I don't think America has one that where the internet counts as the post.
But wouldn't that also violate their? Is it the First The Second Amendment's the guns.
Yeah.
The First Amendment.
The free speech.
Yeah.
Involves, I get to say whatever I want, no matter what it does to you. Unfortunately, they have to be here, and for its states don't get along either, and the feds don't like talking to the states, and it's all very difficult.
I tried to report some threats of violence that a guy who lives in Penrith, that's in New South Wales, isn't it?
Yep.
That he had posted publicly to maybe just via message, anyway, online. And I went to the police, my local police station, and tried to report it, and they said, you'll have to report it to the police in New South Wales because it's not our jurisdiction. I mean, like, it was hard enough going into the station and getting them to listen to me, let alone imagine calling the Penrith police station saying, look, I don't know where this guy lives. I don't even know if this is his real name. I've got some pictures I can send you, but he's basically said that he's going to bash me over the head with a baseball bat. What are you going to do about it? Just get off the internet, love.
Yep. Even Zoe Quinn over in the United States, when she was at the peak of sort of her harassment, she took a USB drive full of so much evidence. She collated everything. And they said, unless you print it out, we can't file it away. We can't use it. She said, how do I print a video? How do I print audio? How do I, they just had no idea how to deal with it. So,
and that's a good point as well, is that one of the reasons why I don't report a lot of stuff, and I'm sure why a lot of other people don't report a lot of stuff, is that if you're speaking to people who don't intimately and instinctively understand the industry that you're in or the environment that you're in online, it sounds ridiculous to speak it out loud. Like, you listen to yourself and you're like, I wouldn't take myself seriously. Because what you want is to have you want the police force to get to the point where they actually have specialists available who understand what the environment is.
Yeah. Can I tell you something funny about the Victoria Police?
I know it's being recorded. Only if it's not defamatory, and also quickly.
Yes, very quickly. It was only 2 years ago they stopped using IE6, which to any nerds in the room will know, it was about 10 years ago that Microsoft themselves recommended it wasn't secure enough to use, and that you should all probably stop using it.
I didn't know that.
They're not known for their technological prowess.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Unfortunately. Yes.
Hi. Ray touched on this really briefly before, but she mentioned self-care, and I was just wondering how you guys all take yourselves out of this headspace, because obviously we're all probably riled up now. How do you recover?
Yeah, something that has become incredibly important to me is going hiking. There is no internet.
We should have a hike sometime.
There is no internet in the wilderness, and it just really gives you a chance to take a break from it all, take a breather, and just kind of rebuild your resilience. But another thing that I do on the internet that actually it gives me a bit of satisfaction. I love muting people. I love preemptively muting people. If I see that someone has been a bit of a dick to someone else, I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not even giving you a chance, and I'm going to mute you. You won't know that I'm not seeing anything that you're tweeting me. I've not blocked you. You can't wear that as a badge of honor, and I can continue on my life, not even knowing that you exist. Another thing that I like to do on Facebook is hide comments on my Facebook page. So only them and their friends can see their comment, and no one else can see it and engage in it. So it kind of sets the tone on my Facebook page for the kind of interactions that I am encouraging, while just hiding these other ones and not having to deal with the vitriol of people coming at me going, you deleted my comment, you're censoring your Facebook page. Yeah, I'm censoring my Facebook page. I don't want to read your bile. But yeah, spending some time to get away from the internet, which is something that I resisted a lot for a while. I was like, no, you will not drive me from this space where my friends are. It's something that I've just come to go, it's okay. Like, I don't have to resist that hard all the time. Give myself some time and some space to get out in the country again.
Actually, that's what Yasmin just updated the rules of her page recently to outline the rules of the space. And she finished by saying that she would delete comments that didn't adhere to her rules, and she said, "Is this a violation of your free speech?" Damn right it is. I'm running a page, not a country.
Exactly.
She said this is not a democracy. Yeah.
I've got a whole list of block words as well that just automatically hide anything that people are writing on the page, and it is long. It's great. And a good tip for that is to include misspellings of common words. That's pretty fun to do as well.
Nita Sarkeesian does that.
Yeah.
She does keyword blocking, and one of them is sandwich. Because she gets told to get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich.
Yes. Back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich.
Do that. I've got a whole list of like really horrible words, but I should put sandwich in there.
Sandwich should be in there.
It's really fun.
Hairy leg should be in there. There's a couple that would be good to go.
Another thing that I do on my Facebook page every now and again, I think we've kind of touched on it but not really delved into it, is there's a bit of dehumanization that happens when you're on the internet. People don't really think of you as a real person. They think of you as a figurehead for a movement or a religion or, a race or something that they fundamentally disagree with for some misguided reason. So you cop all of that hate. Something that I do that makes me a little bit vulnerable is I reveal a lot about myself online, a lot of personal stories, and I really try and make myself as real and relatable as possible to the people that follow me. And while that may not deter the people that are hell-bent on making me an example and sending hate my way, it does strengthen the people that follow me for the right reasons, and they will back me up because they are friends of mine online. They're part of my life. They're not someone that follows someone that's a bit distant. So I think that kind of changes the dynamic of the kind of community that you build online and how they can back you up as well, just like real friends would.
Leena, what do you do to self-care?
I'm bad at it.
Get better.
Vices, friends, sex. I'm not the person to give you advice. The only good advice that I would give you would be to find your posse, feel safe, and bunker down. Just be somewhere where you feel safe. Use the halt approach to going online if you're feeling particularly overwhelmed. I really like that. I'm terrible at following it because I'm a massive hypocrite. But don't pick up your phone if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired is good advice, because then it might make it a bit easier for you to tackle what's in front of you.
Never going online again.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm screwed like every 5 minutes. I'm starving right now and about to kill someone.
I'm always hungry.
So I feel like I'm not in a position to give good advice because I haven't figured it out myself yet. But good therapist, do your therapy homework, some compassionate self-talk is what I'm trying to work at the moment, which I'm trying my best at. See, I didn't say I was bad at it. It's working already. I'm cured. Trying to be kind to yourself and treating yourself as a friend, I think, I'm way better at taking care of other people than I am of myself. So I think pretend you're someone else that you care about and love, and go hard.
And don't charge your phone next to your bed. That way you're not tempted to look at Twitter at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Don't even. I can't not do that. I break out in hives thinking about it. I need that next to me. Yeah.
Clem, what's your self-care tip?
It's a bit cliched, but I really enjoy spending time with my kid. It's even just saying that just made me want to happy cry a little bit. This is the cliche twee part about it, but it's really hard to take seriously all the stuff that's going on online when either your child is throwing a tantrum or is just discovering something really amazing or something not amazing but that's really amazing to them for the first time. I pulled my credit card out before because he obviously sees me paying for things all the time, and just recently he's just discovered that if you touch the credit card to the pay machine, it makes a beep. And it's just this new thing that he loves to do. And I just really love, letting him pay for stuff. And it's such a silly, simple thing, but, it's kind of the same as hiking. I really love walking. I've started to enjoy cooking. I really like making stuff from scratch and nurturing yourself by eating good food that makes you feel good and that has, some kind of connection to connects you more to I don't like using terms like the real world because I don't think that the internet is not the real world, but connects you to things that are less intense than that space. And, having good girlfriends around me is really important. Having people who understand what the experience is like of being in that space is important too. But yeah, I think that it's not impossible to create a balance. When I feel like I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed, I do try and substitute that sensation of being connected online with being connected with all the other things that are good in my life as well. Yeah.
I box because it makes me feel strong, but also it brings you. I found physical exercise is really important because it brings you back to your body, to yourself, and reminds you that you are capable of things. Yeah. Are there any more questions? We've got time for one more.
So we pretty much established that the authorities are useless. Do any of you have suggestions on how we can go about changing culture and getting people to realise there are serious repercussions, even though no one's actually going to enforce it, unfortunately?
Gosh, I wish. Honestly, I wish there was a simple answer to, changing the way a whole group of people think and how they respond. I think there's a lot of responsibility that does lie on the platforms that they are posting on. I do think that, sites like Facebook in particular, really need to up the amount of people that are dealing with those reports. That's if there's a couple of really good articles online based in the places where those people are dealing with these reports and the kind of images that they're exposed to and the kind of things that they're exposed to on a daily basis. And, there were reports of them not, being able to access psychological care, any kind of support really to do their job properly and well. And I think that, they become, just as we do, quite desensitized to the material that they're seeing. So, while they might not think what we're experiencing is severe, because they're dealing with things like child pornography on a daily basis, and that's what's flashing through their heads. So I think that's just one example, but I think that the platforms really do need to step up. They need to take these things seriously and, instead of Twitter deciding that 280 characters is a priority, maybe get rid of the Nazis. I don't know. I think that a lot more can be done. Freedom of speech does not extend to third-party websites that are global, and that's where I think a lot of the answers and responsibilities lie. I do think that local authorities everywhere could do better, but they require a lot of training and understanding as to what we're experiencing and going through. I think it's much easier to go to the source, to be honest, and the platform that they're provided.
One of the things that you guys have spoken a bit about that's been successful for you has been, at least in some respects, organising with other women. And I feel like in the past, that is where you would go. If the authorities, if your boss, if the police were, they weren't taking you seriously, you'd all band together and you'd make sure they took you seriously. You'd be collectively, we are stronger than individually. I'm a unionist, right? But I am all for this. And you see it happen, all of Australian history is all of the conditions that we have today that we take for granted, like the weekend, like public libraries, all that was demanded by people banding together. Yep. So I think that's, Widget is a perfect example, right? You've got women in there who will collectively they'll come together, they'll support people in material ways who are in strife. And I really feel like we can only do this if we all, put our eggs in the same basket and go, we're in this together. We've got to fight it together.
My official comment is it's time to go mole.
What does that mean, Leena?
That's my working class upbringing coming out. But it's shit just got real. Maybe, I don't know. How do you say it in the city? It's time to circumvent the things that are failing us and take action. It's time to chain ourselves to things. It's time to demand better and to not shut up until they do it, because they're not going to, unless if we just sit there and say, can you please maybe change your platform please so that I don't feel like I'm going to die every 5 minutes, please, thank you, okay, bye. They're not going to listen to us. If we start interrupting their income streams, if we start marching on their properties, if we start chaining ourselves to stuff.
Wouldn't be the first time women had done that.
No, like Zelda DePrano did in 1969 to the steps of Parliament for equal pay by herself. And the cop who had the bolt cutters walked up to her and said, "Aren't you embarrassed that it's just you?" And she said, "No, because tomorrow there'll be 3 and the next day there'll be 5. And there was. And there was a movement after that. And then she was on the tram refusing to pay the full fare because she only makes 75 cents to the dollar. So I'm only paying 75% of the fare. And she started rabble-rousing. And she has told me it's time to go mole. Like, she's my friend. I can call her my friend. I catch up with her. She says it's time to take matters into your own hands because women of colour specifically can't trust the cops right now. Trans people can't trust the cops right now. If they're not helping white women, then we're really screwed. You know what I mean? Like, if they're not even helping, the women that have the most power, then they're not going to do anything for anyone else. So it's time to forget that, unless your life's in immediate danger, of course, cultural zero, blah, blah, blah. But, it's time that we started getting really angry and stop being polite and caring about, this is going to sound horrible, caring about our jobs. It's time to start saying, you know what, you want my workforce, you realise that this disparity is a problem, you're going to have to, what's in it for me? What are you going to offer for me? I want these protections from trolls, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, and I want the police to start doing their job. I want them to have cybersecurity units, I want them to have a basic understanding of how these things can be reported. And, it's low on the priority list when you can't even report a rape. I get that. And I'm not saying that, this is the most important thing in the world, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and they are linked. There is crossover between the spaces that we're being told we're allowed to occupy and the spaces that we're being told we are not. And it's time to get mad about both. And I think we can.
That's all we've got time for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Please thank our panellists, Clem Ford, Ray Johnston, and Leena van Deventer. I'm Steph Convery. Leena and Clem will be signing books after this immediately in the balcony downstairs. I don't know where anything is from here. So if you'd like to get your book signed, please make your way there. Thanks again.